Hi, welcome to episode 33 of The Geekly. My name's Jules.
I'm Lex, and today we're talking about Supergirl and Legends of Tomorrow, as well as
Doom Patrol, Twilight Zone, and What We Do in the Shadows.
Let's kick it off with Supergirl, which we've literally just watched.
You just watched? Yeah, I thought it was alright, actually. I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was thinking as we were watching it, first episode in a few weeks, that it's just kind of felt like it worked. I think Lex works better as an off-screen...
An idea.
Yeah, he's such an iconic character, and everybody kind of has their own versions of him and things they like about him. He works best as just this kind of like boogeyman off orchestrating things and having them like kind of go after his accomplices more than him.
Yeah, I think the idea of Lex is a very powerful idea, but sometimes, I mean, everybody has their ideas and what makes a good Lex Luthor, what doesn't. I don't particularly like the Jesse Eisenberg. I quite like this one. It's not amazing, but I think it just had the idea of Lex Luthor. Nobody can argue with that. You know, it can't fall down to anybody's kind of estimations of who they think he should be, what they think he should be. So he's out there somewhere operating the shadows at the moment. I think we can all agree that's kind of a good place to be, really.
That's where he should be. I mean, like in terms... Because I'm not particularly fond of this Lex Luthor. The first time I saw the Jesse Eisenberg, I liked his Lex Luthor. The second time I was like, what the hell? This sucks. But I can't remember from the Superman movies because it's been so long since I've seen them.
The Gene Hackman character.
Yeah. I think he was kind of alright.
Yeah, I quite like Gene Hackman in general. He was slightly more reserved, like a powerful presence. He was kind of played for laughs quite often, though, because it was that kind of... the Reeve films, that was kind of what it was about.
Yeah, it was before the superheroes got really dark. I think, though, like, my favourite media portrayal of Lex Luthor is the Smallville Lex Luthor.
Is that Michael Rosenbaum?
I can't remember the actor's name.
I think that's
but like I really enjoyed his performance and kind of the back and forth between him and Superman kind of being allies and being not allies and exploring the complexity of their relationship with each other. But yeah, since then I haven't really come across another Lex that I've been like, yeah, that is Lex Luthor.
So yeah, I mean, what did you make of the episode? Kind of a success. I mean, the idea of Lex has kind of got Lena and Supergirl to kind of bury the hatchet. They're now kind of friends again, and the three of them, along with Alex, are going to be working to
I have to say, I love that team up.
Yeah, it's kind of cut down. There's no bigger DEO thing. We haven't got James, we haven't got Jean. It's just these three working together. I think is a good team.
Particularly in this episode, they were able to kind of overcome their differences and get back to a place where they're all on the same side. Because there had been some conflict between Alex and Supergirl and some conflict between Lena and Supergirl. And in this episode, they kind of all sort of came together, and Supergirl was able to sort of acknowledge her own prejudices and one-track thinking that she has sometimes.
Can I just say, it's a bit interesting that we're getting the slightest hint of nuance from Supergirl, because it's often, and with Superman as well, this is what I believe, it's one way, it's my way or the highway in terms of morality. And this is just the merest touch of kind of nuance to that, saying you did a bad thing, but good things happened because of it. So that was quite interesting to kind of see in a super thing.
It's really, really unusual for like the super family to kind of have that just because the outcome was horrible, and as in like Lex getting superpowers, a lot of good was done.
Like the ends justifying the means kind of thing. Yeah.
So it kind of evens out, and Supergirl admitting that she was actually wrong was kind of sort of a profound moment for anybody in the super family. I don't think they do that very often. They're kind of, up on their pedestal and dictating morality to us lowly beings. I didn't really like the Ben Lockwood stuff. I think it's important that they're kind of reflecting the current sort of socio-political climate in the States at the moment. Well, I guess kind of everywhere at the moment. It's sort of spreading. But I was also thinking, like, I'm so tired of it in real life that, like, I want escapism instead of realism. And I thought still the storyline about J'onn J'onzz kind of figuring out who he is was kind of the most compelling part of this episode.
Yeah.
And I really want a Martian Manhunter spinoff.
I kind of feel like the same. I think that could have been its own episode, though. We had two kind of competing elements here. I really like the J'onn stuff, and he's now conceded that he's not a man of peace. He had this great talk with his dad. He is the Martian Manhunter, and he knows who he is now moving forward. So I like that. Yeah, Ben Lockwood, I kind of think he should have been left in the first half of the season.
He has fulfilled his purpose.
Yeah.
He stirred up stuff. They should have left him in prison and just kind of let him sit there, and maybe if they really wanted to bring him back in a couple seasons for something. But to do he was basically in prison overnight, and then they're like, oh no, we're gonna let you out because of a technicality that was just, it felt really forced. And his appearances since then have felt really sort of limp and non-dynamic.
Yeah.
I mean, you just kind of get these little glimpses of him in the sort of DC political arena, but he's not really doing anything, he's not accomplishing anything, he's just kind of there.
Yeah. My thoughts about Lockwood is he's kind of being brought back now, probably for like a redemption arc. I don't really think we needed that. He was okay being like a bad guy that was locked away and kind of forgotten about forever. I don't know, something with him and his son, there might be some kind of redemption. The thing that's interesting though is when the Red Daughter put on the Supergirl outfit, she went to DC, she kind of was using her laser vision to kind of destroy...
Wreck the White House.
Yeah, wreck the White House, set the roof on fire. Because of the kind of burying the hatchet, Alex and Lena asked to meet up with Supergirl. She comes, the real Supergirl arrives, and she says, are you here to arrest me? They're like, we know you didn't do that. And so they are now, there's that trust again, there's that unity of the three of them. And moving forward, they know that Miss Tessmacher shot James. They obviously knew that Lex was the bad guy. They know there's like another Supergirl on the scene. So the three of them now, as kind of a real reduced, drawn back team, are going to move forward. And I like that. You know, we often talk about the fact that we'd love that to happen in Arrow. You know, we'd love it to be the team be whittled down a bit and do some kind of smaller scale missions. But that bodes well maybe for the rest of the season.
I think so. And I mean, with these three characters, I mean, they're all incredibly strong and complex and really three-dimensional. And, you know, I mean, we've talked about how Supergirl manages the ensemble cast really well, but it is nice every now and then to have these moments where just a small portion of the cast is focused on and we get to sort of explore the dynamics between them, particularly because there has been so much, not really animosity between them, but strife between all three of them, that they've kind of come together in this moment to do something good. And similarly, the General Haley, who is like the most unpredictable character in all of Supergirl, but not
She'll tell you off and then invite you to her kid's bake sale.
I mean,
in the next breath.
Done really, really effectively. Like, it never seems inconsistent with the character. You're just kind of left with this, like, who the hell is this woman? And the fact that, you know, she's been totally against Supergirl being involved and kind of let off the leash. And in this episode, she accepts the donuts and is kind of like, yeah, okay, we need your help. And she also agrees that Supergirl wasn't the one to attack the White House. It's interesting because it's taking her out of the nemesis role. I really appreciate it when, I mean, Haley's not really a bad guy, but she is sort of a bad guy.
Yeah, sometimes authority can be like a sort of halfway house between a bad guy and a good guy, because they're about rules and regulations, and that's almost as bad sometimes. You know, you have to kind of make them go against the habit of a lifetime for them to be part of, quote unquote, the team. And so, yeah, she's kind of having a bit of a character arc here where she's kind of coming back towards the side of good, I guess. Yeah.
I'm really enjoying the Haley arc. I mean, like, every episode, sometimes I'm like, oh my god, I hate her, and other times it's like, she is so weird.
Yeah, she's super weird.
Like, so yeah, I think this was kind of one of the most successful episodes we've had in a while, where everything kind of felt like it worked together.
All I'd say is just get rid of Lockwood. He's basically not really serving any purpose at the moment. And yeah, I'm enjoying the kind of new direction we've been going along the last 3 episodes, and no other real points. I mean, Brain goes ring back, but that doesn't really do much. James has admitted that he needs like psychological support because he's clearly got post-traumatic stress after his ordeal.
I hadn't realised that Lex had tried to kill him 8 times, which we found out in this episode.
Yeah.
It was like, you know, if somebody tried to kill you 8 times, you should definitely be in therapy.
Of all the kind of Arrowverse shows at the moment, this is the one that kind of, I'm quite excited for the resolution of this season. It's going in a good direction.
Out of all of the Arrowverse shows, I'm not counting Legends because they've been gone for fucking ever. Between Flash, Arrow, and Supergirl, this season of Supergirl has been the one that most consistently delivers quality content, whereas both Arrow and Flash have been struggling this season.
That's a pretty good moment to move on.
Speaking of Legends, I was so happy to have Legends back. Again, it's another show that does the ensemble thing really well. Like, the writers know the strengths of each of the characters and which kind of pair-ups work and which ones don't, and it's just really enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I think Legends, this is the bar for ensemble pieces. Wherever you think about, you know, it's silly, it's wacky, these aren't kind of, you know, it's not Batman, Wonder Woman and Superman running around together. They're not, you know, a kind of C-grade kind of team, but the ensemble is always well managed. Everybody gets their chance, everybody gets their moments. We don't have weird shoehorned D.A. Cecile moments where she's just given like half a storyline because we haven't seen her in 6 weeks. Everybody kind of gets their moment. That's what I like most about Legends, I would say.
Ava's reaction to the Legends
If they are about to break up, Sarah and Ava, I'm just going to burn CW down to the ground.
It's just conflict for conflict's sake. And even the things that Ava was saying, I was suddenly thinking, like, that is not in line with her character at all.
it's like, do you even know Sarah? The problem is, I think Sarah basically should have confided in Ava, like, at the beginning. Like, we believe there's a conspiracy. You know, that they had this...
She tried to, but...
When they were dancing, I mean, yeah, I just think, like, she could have brought her in, or she could have talked over the phone, talked about, is this a secure line? Like, you know, who cares? You know, just to tell you think there's a conspiracy afoot. But they had this brilliant dance where they were talking and fighting at the same time, and the dance was choreographed really well, and they couldn't resolve it, and so they kind of...
Ava just walked
Ava
off.
walked off, yeah.
The last time Legends on, we were talking about how, like, Ava and Sarah are the most stable, healthy couple in the Arrowverse.
Absolutely.
And then, like, they come back and they throw this wrench into their relationship.
Yeah.
And it's, like, I would be really disappointed if the writers actually break them up and
Yeah.
they don't resolve it in the end.
So, I mean, what the story revolved around this week was the Kopay from the last episode. There was footage of Mona basically releasing the Kopay, and she's like, I didn't do that. Gary walks in, he fires her, like, immediately, and she's like, I didn't do that. Something's happening. And they find out that the security footage was doctored. And so the whole episode, half the team go to Mexico in 1961 where the Kopay's become a wrestler and he's interfered with the timeline, and they have to kind of resolve that. The other half is Nate and Zari basically finding out that Hank's phone was the device used to change the security info. It's great because Nate, you know, and Hank, they have this lovely kind of resolution. They're kind of getting on really well, and he kind of says to Hank, when they find out that Hank's done this, he's like, Hank, you should have brought me in. And then Hank leaves the room. He looks at Sarah like, hack his phone, like, we know he's like the bad guy now. So it's all that trust has kind of gone again. I really like Nate. I like he's kind of got levels to him, the act, and I like that he's just immediately back to zero trust of Hank.
His character has had kind of a really distinct development from the, you know, he started off basically as like a historian geek person who kind of filled in the
grandson
blanks.
is of some legend as well.
Yeah. Nate has developed some skills over
Yeah.
the past few years. It was a little bit problematic for me because it's basically the second part of a two-part thing, and having like that massive gap in between, it disrupted the continuity a bit. I mean, even with the like last time on Legends, it didn't really work that well. It felt like I should have gone back and watched last episode before watching this one.
Let's talk about the resolution of the episode. Mona takes the Kopay. They're still in Mexico. They're both going to go off and live in Hawaii, back where he originally comes from. She's like, oh no, you know, we can't be together. Guy comes in, like, shoots the Kopay, and then she turns into a Kopay. Because I assume when he scraped her chest, like, he passed some kind of DNA over, and then she turned back again.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what's happening there. And so she, like, kills the guy, and then obviously the Kopay's dead, and that was kind of how it ended. I think this episode was okay. I think after such a big gap, it's difficult to immediately come back into a great episode. My expectations are also sky high, because this is Legends, and it's working pretty well. So it was an okay episode, but I'm kind of hoping for a bit more. Yeah, I just hope that this isn't the end for Sarah and Ava, really.
Okay, Doom Patrol so far has been like my favorite part of our weekly watch series, but like this week's episode was just really fucking bizarre.
I mean, the first 3/4 of it, and I literally mean 3/4, was like, I don't know if you've seen the film Vantage Point, where you get the same series of events but from loads of different perspectives.
Yeah.
So the first 3/4 of this episode is them getting from their bedrooms to the study to have a team meeting, and during this journey they all have trouble. Rita kind of...
She ends up oozing through a furnace because she just disintegrates into a blob.
Yeah, she like goes through a grate down another level and just ends up in the cellar, and she can't get herself back together. So she struggles. Larry is in his room, and the energy gives him this chance to relive one of his biggest regrets. And he relives this moment over and over again where he's in the back of like a pickup with John, I think. And then he finally admits to himself that how hard it was to live that way in the 1950s, I think. You know, he talks about finding boys hog-tied and killed. There's a lot of horrible like gay jokes around the locker room at the military base. And so he admits that to himself for the first time, that it was very, very difficult to live that life. The energy's like giving him this chance to relive it. Jane is having this conflict between all of her characters, well, some of her characters, because...
Out of all of them, these little stories, I found Jane's kind of the most interesting because until now, every time we've seen one of her other personalities, they've all kind of seemed to be in sync, where like whoever's needed comes out at exactly the right moment. And in this, we saw the bickering and contesting between the various ones, and some coming out when others don't want that personality out. So that I found a little bit interesting.
And they've got this kind of internal struggle, because in the last episode we find out that Niles Calder wanted to lock her up in this home. Well, that's what she says. Like, she's watching a video and he refers to himself as like he could be a father to her. So it's a bit like she's kind of shocked at the fact that this supposed father would lock her up. And she goes down to the room with all the videos of all her personas, like she's breaking them, and a different persona will say like stop breaking them, and she breaks some more, and then she's out in the garden like dancing around. And so she's this real like conflict between all these different personalities. Robot Man is the other one where he decides to confront the guy that's been standing in as his daughter's father.
He goes a bit bit crazy this
Yeah.
episode, which we find out why at the end.
Yeah, I mean, he's hallucinating, very vivid hallucinations. He thinks he's in this with the guy. He starts like trashing his house, and then we just see that he's in like the study, like just trashing the study. So he's kind of losing his mind, and so that's it. That's like the first 3/4 of this episode. Everyone's going through these different kind of struggles and traumas. It takes them forever just to literally get down to this team meeting where Cyborg wants to meet up. All we learn in this first 3/4 of this episode is that these are literally a group of barely functioning human beings. How the hell are they going to take on Mr. Nobody is anybody's guess.
And it really underscores the fact that they are completely not in sync with each other, because they're all in the same house and they're all having these major struggles. I mean, like, you know, Rita mentions that like she was down in the furnace and nobody heard her, even though she was calling for help and nobody came. And so they're all kind of stuck in their own private individual problems and not able to like step over those and connect with each other.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the underlying message of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, they're just all completely haunted by their past. They're all haunted by something that's happened to them, and they're all in deep trauma. I mean, you know, they just can't. I think Rita's the closest to kind of moving on, because she said, we find out that her name isn't Rita Farr, that was her stage name. I don't know if we already knew that, but she says like Rita Farr existed in films. If I'm not in films anymore, Rita doesn't exist, and if Rita doesn't exist, like, who am I? And she's kind of on this new path of self-discovery. And I think after her kind of talk with Mento last week, you know, she's forgiving herself for whatever this thing with the child that we keep seeing and the woman. She's kind of the one closest to moving on, but Robot Man's like in complete meltdown. He's completely like losing his mind thinking about the fact that...
I mean, we have to mention Admiral Whiskers at this point, because I mean, he's the reason Robot Man goes nuts. And I mean, Admiral Whiskers gets his whole backstory, you know.
Yeah.
The Doom Patrol bus runs over his mother, and you know, there's this like traumatic moment where this little rat like is out there screaming to the heavens because his mother's been run over. And Mr. Nobody, as the narrator, kind of talks to him and says, you know what you need to do is like, you need to avenge your mother. And so Admiral Whiskers develops this plan, sneaks in, climbs into Robot Man, and just fucks him up.
Yeah, he's been living in his head for the past 6 episodes, we find out.
Him climbing out of Robot Man's mouth is where the episode ends. So not a lot is accomplished in this episode.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really know what's going on with Robot Man until like you get to the end, and then it's kind of like, all right, that's just a little bit weird. I think it's probably our first filler episode.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, I mean, this episode, we learn that they're kind of barely functioning human beings. Robot Man says they need therapy, and they just talk about their issues, and that's kind of it. It's like a bottle episode. They never leave the house. Would you say there's a little bit too much focus on flashbacks in this show?
Yeah, I mean, it's been something that I've sort of felt from the beginning, that we had the first episode where we sort of got an overview of everybody's kind of like a brief summary of everybody's backstory of kind of like where they got. Every episode since then, we've delved pretty deeply into somebody's backstory via flashback, and we don't need that much backstory, and it's really just kind of slowing down the main plot, which is to find the chief ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, we get that they're haunted at this point. You know, no more flashbacks. Flashbacks can't tell us that any more than they already have. We saw Larry, you know, with the guy John. We've got that already. We know what's going on.
Particularly this episode we had where it was like took us through Larry like having the accident and his wife leaving him, and then him telling John that they couldn't be together. And we don't really need any more of Larry's backstory than that. We got a pretty solid, detailed chunk of who he is. The only thing I really want to know at this point is what Rita's secret is. Yeah. Everybody else's backstory, I know enough to go forward and have them kind of do things in the future in order to progress the plot. I really don't need to keep getting more and more of their history.
So, I mean, do you think this is going to be a show where it's predominantly we're getting character development? Is kind of plot and momentum kind of secondary? Because we have got so much about these characters in the first 7 episodes, and we're no nearer to any resolution with Mr. Nobody, no nearer to finding out where Niles is, no nearer to them becoming a team, no nearer to them kind of discovering their powers, maybe in Rita's, like, and Larry, like, working with the energy. Is that it? It's just like a character development driven show?
It seems to be going that way. I mean, I think probably what the problem is that the writers have a group of very complicated, interesting characters, and they do want to share all of these details about their lives and stuff, but they're not doing it at the right moments. They need to kind of make better choices about what information they include and when.
I want to see them kind of fighting or going up against something like some lower level kind of issues, just to see if they can be a kind of cohesive unit and kind of learn about where they're failing in that sense.
Like at at this stage of the game, we know they're dysfunctional people.
Yeah.
We really don't need to be hit over the head with that anymore. Like, let us see their dysfunction come out in the process of them trying to solve a problem, rather than sitting around a room saying, I'm fucked up because the X, Y, and Z happened in my life. It's like, yeah, we know that already.
Yeah.
Like, get on with the story.
Yeah, so, yeah, let's just hope for a bit more story moving forward. Should we talk about the Twilight Zone?
This was my favorite this week. Like, I love the original Twilight Zone. I think Jordan Peele has done a great job of updating and modernizing it. He is kind of the creator that the horror genre has needed for a very long time. I mean, I've been a horror fan since I was old enough to watch horror movies, and his stuff is the only horror that I've seen that has actually creeped me out. And I mean, like, Get Out was absolutely terrifying. Like, I'm just really excited to have somebody in the horror genre who seems to know how to deal with the multiple layers of stuff.
I really like this. This felt like a kind of low budget indie project. You know, it wasn't that glossy. It wasn't that kind of, it didn't feel high budget. The main guy, I've seen things before, Tracy Morgan was in it as well, but this felt so true to kind of the original show, because that was so kind of low budget and stuff. They could have gone a completely different way with it. They could have made it, given it the Hollywood's makeover, but they've stuck to the original content, and it revolves around one very simple premise, and that's what's great about it as well. It's not overcomplicated. The premise is very simple, and you just see how far they can push this one premise. You're not thrown all sort of different ideas, just one, and let's push it and see how far we can take it. When you revolve a show around one premise, like the Twilight Zone does, you just got to make sure that premise is like twisted and scary as hell, and it was.
Watching Samir's progression through the episode was actually painful to watch. Like, his struggle from failing comedian to
real bad.
And I mean, because he's not really a particularly sympathetic character.
No.
You know, he starts off, he gets rid of a few people accidentally, and then he kind of realizes his power and starts doing it to do a greater good, and then it just kind of devolves into sort of selfish things, like he gets rid of his girlfriend's mentor and stuff like that. But,
I mean, let's talk about the cat first. The dog called Cat, that's short for Caterpillar. He meets up with Tracy Morgan, who's this well-known, really famous,
like this legendary
stand-up comedian. And Tracy basically says to him, you have to put yourself out there. Don't talk about the Second Amendment. Put something personal out there. But when you put it out there, it's theirs forever, as in the audience's forever. Yeah. And so he talks about this dog called Cat. It's actually called Caterpillar, and the audience love it. They lap it up. They're laughing and laughing and laughing. He goes home. Where's the cat? I mean, where's the dog? It's so confusing. What do you mean? We don't have a dog. And so you immediately learn that when Tracy Morgan's character is saying that it's theirs forever, these things literally disappear. They're not being killed, because he confronts him saying, I'm murdering these people. He's like, no, they never existed. So there's no murder involved. There are no crying mums involved.
That was kind of one of my favorite lines of, like, you know, what involves a murder? You have to have, like, intent, motive, and crying moms. Yeah. Or it's not a murder. Yeah,
and so obviously he kind of toys with this. He accidentally gets rid of his fiance's nephew. Yeah. And so he kind of goes by that trace. But then he thinks, okay, what should I actually purposefully do with? And he removes his girlfriend's mentor who helped her become a lawyer. In this new reality, he's gone. She's no longer a lawyer. She no longer had the money to afford a trip to Paris that saved their relationship where they bought Red Coat. So they're just people that know each other, that used to go out, and his whole life is just kind of immediately changed for the worse. That was savage. I mean, that was really dark, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, like, I really felt for him through the whole thing. I was sitting here thinking, like, no, don't do that. Like, this is going to be a mistake. Like, I was totally invested in his struggle, even though he wasn't a particularly sympathetic character. And I think, like, that's kind of really the strength of a story, is when you feel for somebody that is pretty unlikable.
We'll come back to this. I would be happy to watch a lot more of this for the creepiness. This isn't a kind of scary story. I think the whole idea of the Twilight Zone, it's not going to be scary. It's kind of creepy scenarios that really kind of make you think as well. And I think that's probably what the originals really revolved around as well, just creepy stuff. And if this keeps being creepy, like, I would return to it, because I don't watch something that kind of creeps me out. I watch some other kind of horrors, but I have room in my life for creepiness. Yeah. And this really hit it. One thing I really liked was that we have the first, like, 10 minutes, and then Jordan Peele just appears on screen, like, in the bar, and he gives Rod Serling Serling the thing he would say that would culminate with him saying in the Twilight Zone.
And like, he does it so well.
One question: at the very end, when Samir writes himself out history and he becomes a face on the wall, and there were hundreds of faces on the wall, have they all had that chat?
Definitely. Like, That's what happens to all of the people who get disappeared, is
Yeah.
they end up on that thing in the back wall.
And that was delicious. I love that.
Yeah.
It's the behind the audience, there was this huge like mosaic of all these heads that are in like an audience. The suggestion is that all of these people have made that deal with
Yeah, because
Tracy
like
Morgan's
after
character.
Jasmir kind of writes himself out of history, we see his kind of biggest competitor, Dee Dee, coming off stage after her set, and she goes up to the bar, and Tracy Morgan just happens to be sitting next to her, and she's like, "Oh my God, do you have any notes?"
Yeah.
And like that's where the episode ends, which is exactly how it started with Smear.
Yeah.
And so you have this idea that like Tracy Morgan's character, J.C. Wheeler.
That's it, yeah. And can I just say, I believe he was in a very bad car crash, Tracy Morgan. He had severe head trauma, and for a long time I don't think he could remember lines. I don't think he was actually in anything, and it was really nice to see him in something, I have to say, just before we continue.
I enjoy Tracy Morgan. Yeah. It ends with this note that like this scenario is going to keep repeating itself over and over and over, and it's kind of a bit like the like selling your soul kind of with a little bit of a twist on it, and it works really well.
There was absolutely a place for this in the current market, I would say, and yeah, I'm very happy to watch more of this.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the rest of the season. The like cast for the rest of the season is absolutely amazing. They've gotten like so many amazing actors.
Seth Rogen's gonna be
I know,
in it.
like Seth, yeah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, cool. Let's round off today's episode with talking about what we do in the shadows, and this was my personal gold star of the week. It's absolutely my type of humour. Let's talk about quickly who's behind the camera. Taika Waititi directing from Thor Ragnarok, and obviously the original What We Do in the Shadows film. It was written by Jermaine Clement, one half of Flight of the Conchords, and he's been in all sorts of other things. I think this is a kind of humour I would describe as like dry. It's the kind of humour where you tell a joke and you have to kind of think about it a little while, and by the time you've just kind of worked out the punchline, the next joke is just about being told. The jokes can kind of hang in the air slightly, and I like that. I like a bit of a thinker sometimes. I really, really enjoyed this. Throughout the whole thing, it's got real gothic style. They're all wearing like old-fashioned clothing, kind of gothic music in the background.
Yeah, there's a moment where like Laszlo and Nadia are out kind of hunting in this like full Victorian gothic regalia, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we dressed down."
Yeah, I mean, let's go through the people. Matt Berry's Laszlo. He's English nobility. This is Matt Berry that's in everything. He's kind of like Liam Neeson. Never changes his accent, never changes his acting style, but whatever he's in, he's the same character. He's always great in it. Natasha Demetriou plays Nadja. She's from like an older, I'm not sure what period of time she's from, but she turned Laszlo into a vampire.
She's been alive for like millennia, I think. Like she kind of, some of the things she said just imply that she's been around for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and her thing is she's currently stalking a guy called Jeff, who she thinks is her first lover, Gregor, reincarnated. So that's her thing. Her and Laszlo are married. Kyva Novak, Face Jacker and Phone Jacker, Man of a Thousand Voices. I used to love watching those shows back in the day. He plays Nandor, who was part of the Ottoman Empire once upon a time. He has a familiar called Guillermo, who's kind of his servant. He's quite meek. He aspires to be a Hispanic vampire because he saw Armand from Interview with a Vampire, and that's the first time he saw a Hispanic vampire in kind of mainstream media, so that's what he aspires to be. And this episode takes place on like their 10th anniversary of servitude, so he thinks on the 10th anniversary he's going to get turned into a vampire. Not so much. But Nandor first he thinks it's only 2 years, but he gives him this glitter painting instead. The whole episode kind of revolves around the fact that the Baron is coming to visit them from the old country. We don't exactly know where that is, but we think like mainland Europe. He's basically coming to see whether they've turned all of the new world into vampires. Have they enslaved the whole country? And Laszlo basically says, we got to Staten Island and that was it. Like, we've never moved from there because the new world's fucking massive. So that's where we kind of find them, the Baron coming over. Yeah, I mean, what did you think of this episode?
It was enjoyable, but it wasn't life-changing or like, wow, this is amazing content. I enjoyed the movie as well, but I know a lot of people are like, What We Do in the Shadows is the most amazing thing ever, and kind of ambivalent about it. This episode felt more of just kind of an introduction without any sort of story attached to it, so it's difficult to kind of see where they're going to go with it, and I had sort of wondered if the format of like a weekly television show would work the same way the film did. The way it's set up, I mean, because the film didn't really have much of a plot either. It was basically just kind of like these little sort of amusing scenes that happened and then it ended, and that's kind of fine for 2.5 hours, but I don't know that same structure can carry an entire television show through a whole season, because I think at some point a story is going to need to kind of emerge and take over beyond these just kind of like little vignette moments.
In this episode we get them kind of doing mundane things, and yeah, I mean, I just quite enjoyed watching vampires do mundane things. One thing I liked about this episode was when the Baron was due to come across, and Nadia kind of does this, there's a lot of talking heads in the episode, and she says, a couple of centuries ago me and the Baron had a very passionate sexual relationship, it. A lot of acrobatic stuff, very animalistic, and yeah, I'm kind of a bit awkward with him coming to visit while Laszlo's here. And I kind of thought, oh, that's a shame. They're kind of going the duplicitous woman route. That's a bit of a cheap, really overdone trope. But then immediately, then you get Laszlo doing a talking head saying, well, a little while ago, the Baron and I had a very sexual liaison. A lot of animalistic stuff, a lot of acrobatic stuff. I like that they kind of immediately broke that down as the fact that Laszlo and Nadja, they're very kind of open about their sexuality, and they didn't take that cheap shot immediately. It's a kind of more thought out kind of humour. And yeah, the Baron like flirts with both of them outrageously, and he doesn't even know Nandor's name, which I like. I think we should also talk about their flatmate Colin Robinson, who is an energy vampire. I assume this is made up just for the show, but it was fantastic. They're daywalkers, and they just live off people's energy.
And they're the only vampires that can feed off of other vampires.
This was hilarious. He's kind of real, like, monotone, lingering in the background. And the three vampires, they seem scared. Like, they talk about the power in him seems to be growing every day. And I love the fact that they brought some virgins round for the Baron's coming out party thing they had. And they left these two virgins alone with Colin Robinson. And they went down to find them. And he had drained the energy out of them. And they talk about the fact that they now have no nutritional value because an energy vampire has drained them, which was so funny.
They either, like, bore you to death or they enrage you.
His office is his hunting ground, he said. It's so perfectly done because when they get this letter that the Baron's going to come, and Nadja says, oh, should we go and get Colin Robinson? Oh, no, Matt Berry says, should we go and get Colin Robinson? And Nadja's like, oh, Colin Robinson would ruin the party. And just as Colin Robinson like walks in, so there's this whole thing about the three of them live with him, but he, even though he's like, he's human, he's like not pale of skin, he's the most kind of, well, yeah, I mean, just human looking one of them, but they are terrified of him. And they fear him. And
see, I didn't really get, like, the terror thing. I got the kind of that it was more sort of cliquey, that like they just didn't want to have to deal with him. Like because he can just bore people, and then like that's what he does. He has absolutely nothing interesting to contribute. He's just constantly going around absorbing people's energy. That they kind of viewed him as kind of maybe not as relevant as a vampire as they are, because like they didn't tell him the Baron was coming. He wasn't involved in it. When they're talking to the Baron, they don't even mention that he exists. His room is way down in the basement.
I thought it might be fear because when he's talking to them, when they're talking about the Baron's meeting, and he kind of, as he's making to leave, he kind of half leaves and then leaves again, and Matt Berry kind of goes, the power in this one like is growing. Like he seems like fearful, and obviously Nadja's like, he's sapped her energy and she's kind of collapsed on the sofa. And I like the idea that they might be scared of him, because vampires are the ones that humans would be scared of, and they're kind of, it's kind of a reversal of the kind of norms. But I just think he's a really great addition. It's so dry, it really landed for me, and I've watched it 3 times, and I was saying to you earlier, like some of the jokes, like when Matt Berry, he says the word bat, like before he becomes a bat, he like announced he's about to change into a bat, and I laughed every time I saw that. I think if you watch Flight the Conchords, something like Toast of London, no laughter track, no kind of studio audience, and real kind of, just jokes that hang in the room. I guess that's what I like. It's my thing apparently, the kind of real dry humour, and it just landed for me. And I've watched it 3 times, and the next one's coming out tonight, so I'll probably be first thing tomorrow morning, I'll watch the next one. Really looking forward to it. And if you haven't seen What We Do in the Shadows, the film, and you're into the kind of dry humour, I don't know how else to describe it really.
I would just say, if you like vampires, you should watch
Fair enough,
What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah,
if you enjoy vampires, you will probably get a kick out of this in some way.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It looks great, sounds great, humour's great, casting's great. I'm kind of in love with this show, so I'm looking forward to watching more.
Right, so that is us for this week. Follow us on Twitter @GeekNerdPod, Facebook /The Geekly.
Cool, see ya.